BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello, Nedheads. Hello, Black Box Battalion. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? On Mondays, I talk to you guys about the Zodiac Killer, an unidentified serial killer who operated in California in 1968 and 69. Whatever happened before or after that is still part of the mystery. And in this episode, I will be joined by Tim Carter. He is the webmaster of thezodiacsolve.com, and he's going to be talking to us all about the prime suspect, Arthur Lee Allen. And you guys know the drill. You can hit the like button if you want, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment down below if you have something to say about the Zodiac Killer. For larger things, you can send them to me at blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. And I am your host, Box Ned. Firstly, I would like to give a big thank you to everyone who listened to last week's episode where I interviewed Paul Brookbanks, and he was talking about a possible solution to the Zodiac Killer's Z32 cipher, and Paul proposed a pretty good one that has also been matched to one that was discovered by Alex Baber, who has been in the news a lot recently. But as we're going to see, that even though some solutions might seem more credible than others, it has still not been accepted by everyone, and it has not been certified by the FBI yet. So we're going to see if there are other possibilities out there. And Tim Carter, who will join us later in the program, has his own solution to the Z32 cipher, which he will present. But first, I would like to share some other things in the world of the Zodiac Killer. Sometimes I begin Black Box Online Radio with the Crime Talk points. As many of you know, I'm a daily listener to the program Crime Talk, which is hosted by Scott Reich, and he is a practicing criminal defense attorney. He's done it for 30 years, and he made a very bold statement when he said that he didn't like handwriting experts. All right, I'm not overly shocked by that. Very few people absolutely love handwriting experts and handwriting analysts, but he also made the statement that he didn't like fingerprint analysis either, or fingerprint experts, and he thought that they were on par with each other. Handwriting evidence and fingerprint evidence, that they have the same value in the court of law, and that absolutely shocked me, because with handwriting evidence, it is very subjective, requires a very strong interpretation, and what he was saying, again, Scott Rice, the host of Crime Talk, is that he didn't like it when fingerprint experts come on the witness stand and they talk about a possible similarity between this mark on someone's fingerprint and another fingerprint. And I was just thinking, well, this is definitely going to tie in very neatly to some of the discussions that we've had about the Zodiac Killer recently. And I understand that sometimes maybe fingerprints can be similar and they're not exactly the same, that some people might just have similar fingerprints, but I would absolutely put the fingerprint evidence as being more valuable in a true crime case than the handwriting evidence. But what do you think? Do you think that they have the same value because they both require interpretation? Or do you think that fingerprint evidence is stronger? Do you think handwriting evidence is stronger? You can drop your ideas in the comments section down below. And I say that it's going to tie in very neatly to some discussions that we've been having on Black Box Online Radio, because I have to give full credit to Dion Walker, who released his newest video talking all about, well, the fingerprint evidence in the Zodiac Killer mystery and the Sherry Joe Bates case. One more time, his channel is called Dion Walker, Dionwalker, and it was all about the fingerprint evidence that they have, and, of course, cataloging them, archiving them, marking them. You know, he really does some great presentations over there. But what do you guys think about the quality of fingerprint evidence, the value of fingerprint evidence? I would love to read your responses in the comments section down below. And I also want to let you guys know that episode 5 in the Killer in the Code podcast is out, and it featured a brief segment with Paul Brookbanks. And if anything, I was glad that the Killer in the Code podcast gave credit to him, because the Killer in the Code podcast is hosted by Michael Connolly, and it talks about the work of Alex Baber. And they were briefly discussing the Zodiac Killer's Z32 cipher once again, and I think that that was their strongest piece of evidence in their entire case. They're, of course, trying to build the narrative that the Zodiac Killer was a man named Marvin Margolis Merrill. Well, I mean, I'm not convinced on any of those things, but their solution to the Z32 cipher was estimate 4 radians and 3 inches, and Paul had a brief appearance on that podcast where he was able to talk about some of his observations and how he got in contact with Alex Baber. And one thing that he was very clear on in the comment section here on Black Box Online Radio is it was impossible for Alex Baber to have stolen his solution. Alex Baber came to it independently, and Paul does verify that, and I take his word for it. But ultimately, I would just like to let you guys know that this channel is now approaching 6,000 subscribers. And I'm going to do something very special for you guys once this channel approaches 6,000 subscribers, perhaps making a new video on a specific topic. I've talked about the history of Zodiac Killer books, Jack the Ripper movies, or maybe the D.B. Cooper mystery with the Dan Cooper comics, doing an episode on the history of the Dan Cooper comics. So ultimately, you can put your ideas in the comment section down below if you can think of a good idea to celebrate 6,000 subscribers. And if you have not subscribed yet to Black Box Online Radio, now would be a great time to do so. And on that note, I would like to get to your supporter shoutouts. And you can support this channel at buymeacoffee.com, buymeacoffee.com/blackboxned88, and that allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show, and anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday. And our first one comes to us from Batman66. Batman66, thank you so much for your regular and consistent support. Batman bought you a coffee. I never get tired of saying that. And Batman66 has also been helping out a lot with these shorts and reels. And they've been on hiatus for a little bit. But tomorrow, I'm planning to relaunch the series of shorts and reels that come out here on Black Box Online Radio, as well as on Black Box Online Radio's Facebook page and BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram. And we also have one from River Prawn Pottery, another regular and consistent supporter. River Prawn Pottery, thank you as well. And even CZ Guy. CZ Guy is another regular and consistent supporter, and it wouldn't be complete without you three guys, Batman66, River Prawn Pottery, and CZ Guy. But there is someone who also supports Black Box Online Radio very regularly, and that is Classic Chevy Cat, who has something nice to say here. And Classic Chevy Cat says on buymeacoffee.com, almost 6,000 subs, Ned. It's been awesome watching your channel grow. It always amazes me the amount of research you must do for each episode. Thank you so much. I can't wait until 10,000 subscribers. It will happen. And thank you so much. Classic Chevy Cat has actually been following the channel since even before it had 1,000 subscribers. As many of you have, I recognize a lot of names in the comment section. And we have another shout out going to Quentin Broom. Quentin Broom is a longtime supporter of Black Box Online Radio as well. As I said, I've had the opportunity to get to know many of you guys over the years. But ultimately, I would like to get ready for the interview segment and bring Tim Carter on the program. Tim Carter is a researcher who was originally from Denmark, but now in the United States, and he really began exploring the Zodiac Killer ciphers, and a lot of things brought him to Arthur Lee Allen. He has some very fresh and unique takes on the subject, because he wasn't somebody that just went down the rabbit hole excessively and then just decided to keep changing his mind a million times over the years, like I have done and like some of you have. But you can follow the evidence and you can see where it brings you, and sometimes you will change your mind. There's nothing wrong with that. But what is also very valuable is what Tim did. He gave a very fresh take on the subject, and he made a lot of observations about the Zodiac Killer case, and it pointed him toward Arthur Lee Allen. So without further ado, I would like to bring Tim Carter on the program. He is the webmaster of thezodiacsolved.com.
What made you take an interest in the case to the point where you wanted to create your own website?
Well, it's actually a little bizarre story how I got into this. I was actually playing around. I don't know if you've heard about the March Impromptu Code, which is like there's a whole big story about Hitler and his missing treasure and all this stuff. Once I went through that whole project and supposedly got very far in it, I was like, well, let me take a crack at something crazy. And I knew at that time, I actually thought the 340 cipher hadn't been solved. And when I started the project, I realized, okay, 340 has been solved. Let's see if you can solve the other ciphers. And for a little over 10 hours, I was sitting and playing around with Claude AI, which I use for coding on a daily basis, and didn't get anywhere. And all of a sudden, I got a spellable phrase that nobody else ever had found out of C 340. And the interesting thing about it was how I got that phrase was actually taking all the misspelled letters that everybody else have always just corrected and assumed were spelling mistakes. I took all those out of 340 and it formed a complete coherent English phrase. And that got me excited. So I had almost given up on working on it actually. Then I started going into, okay, let's go deeper. I didn't know any of the suspects, victims, anything in the case. And I started looking, of course, at all the evidence I could find online about it. Of course, Arthur Lee Allen has always been the only main official suspect by the police. So I went through all that. The great thing about Claude AI is when you have a context in a project, it keeps referencing everything you're going through, you found out, you excluded, you've included. So eventually it kept coming up when it's going through a suspect list, it kept coming up with things like that Arthur Lee Allen said, I'm going by Lee Allen. And my aha moment was actually when I saw the movie again. I was watching it with my girlfriend. And I noticed in the movie, there's a scene where he literally on his shirt has the name tag Lee, Lee. And then that's when I was like, well, I feel like I've seen that when Claude is going through evidence. And so I went back. And then I noticed over and over and over and over again, he always told people he went by Lee Allen to everybody. Once I told Claude, okay, let's look at this. That's when all of a sudden Claude started going crazy and being like, excuse me, it's actually in every single cipher. And that got me excited. You know, that was kind of a rush to figure something out nobody else had seen. So then I was like, okay, let's see what else can we do here, especially because everybody was saying that C13 and C32 probably were BS, not something you could solve because they were too short, right? And that's when I found out his complete address was encoded in C32. So after that, I started making a website. I wanted it out there. I had no idea how many forums and groups there are about the Zodiac Killer online. I just thought, oh, I'm going to post this and people are going to be interested. And I was actually surprised how bombarded I got with messages about you're completely way off, you're so wrong, you're biased, you know, and I'm like, listen, I got there knowing nothing. I didn't pick the name just, you know, out of a hat. I didn't want to force Arthur Lee Allen to be the Zodiac Killer. It completely appeared to me on the screen naturally with AI going through it. So me personally will say I'm not 99%, I'm 100% positive that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer. And to make it even crazier is after I started posting on Facebook, Connie Seawater actually reached out to me. And we were talking back, and I'm assuming you know who she is. She was
Yes, of
part of
course.
that whole Netflix show and stuff. Her family knew Arthur Lee Allen. She told me some really horrifying things that has happened in her life and stuff, but she actually completed a couple of the last pieces of the puzzle. But the biggest thing in it, especially because everybody's saying, oh, he's Lee, Leigh, not Lee was she confirmed to me she only knew him as Lee Allen. So I'm like kind of surprised that not more people. I guess it's because it's never been solved, and there's so many people that have their own opinions about it that people today just can't accept that it could be him. But I'm looking at it as he was the primary main suspect. And if I can get his name out of every cipher plus his address, imagine in 69 if the police had solved 409 and 340. Are you telling me if they had found Lee Allen in 6 ciphers and his address, he wouldn't have gone to jail? I don't believe that.
So if I can understand everything that you have laid out, it would
Mhm.
be that you have found the name Lee Allen in the cipher spelled Lee and
Yes,
Lee Allen, and you also found his address in the Z32.
yes, correct.
And would you like to talk to us about your solution to the Z32? Because this is one that has been in the news a lot lately. I've also been talking about it a lot on Zodiac Monday. And
Sure.
would you like to talk to us about how you were able to solve it?
So again, I'm not the best math guy. That's why I love computers and AI. But basically, how you can resolve these things is so you take 408, you take the last 18 characters that everybody has always said they were leftovers. You need those. You need all the misspelled characters from 340, and you need the characters that are in 32. When you're adding all those up and mapping them to decipher mapping characters, you will be able to spell Fresno Street, Vallejo, and 32 is 32 characters. That is how I came to the actual address. So 32 is actually the character length of 32. That's his street number. And Fresno Street, Vallejo can be spelled when you're mapping all the extra letters that are left in all. So it's basically you need all 4 ciphers where you need 408, 340 decrypted. So it couldn't have been solved until 2020. They had to be decrypted because you had to have the incorrect letters. Those letters, when they then are converted back again, is when you can spell these this address. Now the craziest thing is I was sitting and playing with something the other day. Let me see if I can find it here. So what I've realized, I went like, okay, let me take all characters there are, all the 18 letters, all the misspelled letters, all the characters that are in 13, and all the characters that are in 32. Okay, so you have all these letters available. What's interesting is when you have all these letters available is you can't spell Leigh, you can't spell Arthur, but you can spell I am Lee Allen, I am the monster at Fresno Street. And Lee Allen has repeatedly called himself a monster in letters to people. I don't know. Again, there's still some letters left in that, but it's still bizarre how many things that I can write Fresno Street with and Lee Allen with. And you got to realize, like a lot of people were saying, well, Lee Allen's not that many different letters, etc., etc. But I'm like, if I can spell his name almost full, you can't spell it 100%. You can spell like 90% in 408. You can spell it 100% in 340. You can spell it 100% in 13. You can spell it 100% in 32. You can spell it 100% in the 78 letter he wrote that police said wasn't a letter from the Zodiac. And you can spell it in the postcard that he sent. Now, the most interesting fact of all of this is I don't know how much you know about cryptology, but basically, if you have a cipher, okay, and you can, let's say, out of all kinds of combinations that you can extract data out of this cipher, let's say you can come to 4 different conclusions, right? For you to know you're correct, you would have to have a mathematical checksum of the count of letters, assign them a numeric value, put them together, And when you divide that number with itself, it would have to be, let's say it comes out to 6, okay? Only one of the 4 results you've gotten out comes to 6. All the others maybe a 7, 9, 12, whatever. C13, why I thought that it's not something that needs to be decrypted was because it's so short. There's not enough characters. So I thought, well, maybe it's a checksum, because I was reading the letters that he had sent. And in one of the letters, he literally says, I think it was to the police or the newspaper, I don't remember. But he's saying, my name is, and a line. And it's almost like he's literally expecting them to put in his name, because he's expecting them to be able to do so. And that's how I was like, well, this is strange. It was just the way he wrote it was weird to me. It was almost like a taunt. It's almost like, excuse me, you know my name now. Put it in. You know what I mean? So C13 is a checksum, and the checksum of the letters in C13 comes out to 6. The checksum of Lee Allen is also 6. It's basically a way for him to let you know that if you got the name Lee Allen, you are correct, because they match the checksum. You understand what I mean?
Well, for the audience, can you explain how this checksum functions and how you're able to get this number 6 out of 13 symbols?
Sure. So basically, what you do to get a checksum out of these characters is each character is assigned a value. So let's say A is 0, B is 1, C is 2, and so on and so on and so on, okay? When you take all these values and you divide them in the end in a multiple of, I think it's 26, that is what all the numbers have to be divided into, a modulo of 26. When you do that versus Lee Allen, the value of L, E, E, L, and so on, when you're doing that, Lee Allen has a modulus of 6, and all the characters in C13 has a modulus of 6.
So you're assigning a numeric value to the characters, and you said
Yes,
you're totaling them up, and then you're dividing by 26?
yes.
Okay, so that gives you 6 in the and the Lee Allen and the Z13 cipher both come out with the
A modulus of
checksum of
6.
6.
Yes, of
I
6.
believe of
That's
6.
correct. So that's
Okay.
how you also do if you send data on the wire, or you need to make sure that when you have a hash of a software package or whatever, if you need someone to verify that they're downloading the authentic package, you have a verification code that when you do the math you need to do on it, you the chances of you coming to that exact result without doing it the correct way is like 1 in a billion. That's how math works in computers and encryption and everything. So to me, it was just interesting. I was reading his profile when I started this, and it's like, okay, he's in cryptography. When I started investigating all this and making the project to even figure out who this was, when I started with the ciphers originally, before I found anything, was the first thing I did was, so there's 2 options when you start this whole Zodiac project, right? One is you assume his name is in there, or you say he never put his name in there, okay? If he put his name in there, he must have done so with a method that was available to him at the time. So basically, what I did was I told Claude to go online and check whatever encryption methods and algorithms were available in 69. So I exclude all the modern ones, okay? And again, I could already see it's too advanced for someone to invent in their basement. So I would assume it's something that someone has read about or learned if it's real. And it's pretty easy to see, especially with the computing power we have today, if something real is coming out of decrypting something. The computer is so fast today, it will really quickly tell you if you're like way off. This is not possible to be decrypted. Okay. So Claude never told me that. That's why I knew I was on the right track. So we were going through several things. Then I was like, okay, let's classify what was available to private people at the time, what was available to military, to Navy, whatever, and we classified all these shit. And that's how all of a sudden I started coming closer and closer to Navy cryptology. And that's how the whole thing just kicked off. All of a sudden, when Claude started telling me, okay, I'm seeing patterns here that is telling me there is true encryption going on top of the encryption. But the whole thing kicked off when literally what made me solve this, in my opinion, was when I found the phrase from the misspelled letters. Because here you see most people, when they work with decryption, what they will assume is they decrypt something, okay? If there's errors in it, misspellings or whatever, most cryptologists will assume they were in there not by mistake, but to make it harder to decrypt. What happens then is most cryptologists, because they assume that, they just correct the mistakes. They don't look at the mistakes as, well, what if the mistakes themselves is data? They just correct them. If there's a spelling error, whatever. And how I even got to that point where I took them out and found a actual American phrase in there, an English phrase. Oh, hold on. Can you hold on one second, Dan?
I can.
Oh, sorry, I'm back. Where did we get to? Let me see here. I wrote it down up here with my phrase. So I got to the phrase, wasn't he my new life? His life will be. And it seems like the same gibberish that's written in all the other, all of his text. It's always this grandiose, weird writing. But how I got to Lee Allen wasn't taking all the letters from C340. I got to Lee Allen out of that one phrase of misspelled letters. And why I took the misspelled letters to begin with was because I was like, okay, I've proven that it's a guy that knew complex math and cipher cryptology. And then I asked myself, are you telling me a guy that could sit in 69, probably without a computer, and write something so complex nobody could solve for 59 years? Are you telling me he can't spell? To me, that just seemed completely illogical. And when I told Claude, listen, do me a favor, take all the misspelled letters, don't correct them, take them out, put them together, and tell me what it will be. And I've never seen AI curse, but it literally came back and said, holy hell, you have something here. And that's when I just kicked in. I had such a rush. I was up for like 2 days when I was working on this. And it was just really mind-boggling to me. Like, it's funny to see. Like, and when I was talking to Claude, what's interesting is because it has such a big context in a project with multiple files, it's almost like you're talking to not a computer, but a person, and you're sitting there and you're going back and forth about solutions. And I'll say this, like, Claude couldn't have solved this without me, but I definitely couldn't have solved it without Claude either, because it is doing so many computations in so many different ways with different logics at the same time that as a human, well, there's a reason it took so many years to just translate 340, like it it was still a human that had to feed it through. And again, it took me 10 hours to even get to something out of this. I was about to give up on it. But once I saw this, I was really blown away. But I was even more blown away when I posted this. I thought people would say, "Oh, great, let's look at it. Let's see it," because I'm like, I'm coming here with a solution nobody else has come with. And I understand apparently a lot of people have too. I never knew that. But I'm coming with a solution that names the primary suspect, the only suspect the police has ever named as officially the guy that could be the Zodiac Killer. And I didn't know anything about him. I'm not biased against it. I had no clue who he was. I didn't know he went by Lee Allen. None of that. But you're telling me with it, and I get to his name by the decrypted ciphers. I'm not pulling it out of the original Zodiac ciphers. They are decrypted to get to his name. That's one layer in itself. His name is in every single cipher. Nobody else is. What I did was I took the San Francisco phone book from the era 69, I believe it was the census. I took all the male names out. I believe that was 29,000 male names. I ran all the names through the ciphers. None of them passed through every cipher. So don't tell me that if this was 1969 and the police had solved 48 and they magically had solved 340 and they saw Lee Allen repeatedly over and over in each cipher, plus his address. Plus, when they interview him, he tells them to their face, I go by Lee Allen. Are you telling me they would not have said he is the Zodiac? I don't believe that.
Okay,
So
though. So
that's why this is what stresses me a little bit about putting this online. I feel like there's so many people that are so invested in this for so many years that's been talking about it and guessing and hoping, but none of them have anything close to the replication methods I have of coming to the primary suspect's name. And you got to realize this came out of math. It's findings. It's deduction. It's literally a computer that took every suspect ever named first, chewed all them through every single material we knew was Zodiac related, then took 29,000 real names from the era and ran those through too. And the computer still came back to me and said, it's Lee Allen. It can't be anybody else. I wrote a scrutiny paper on my website. I don't know if you've seen it, because after all this was done and I posted it and I saw how much clash I got from it, I'm like, okay, let me prove myself wrong. And I sat for 8 hours and tried to break what I had done and tried to force other names in there, other combinations, everything, you name it. I myself could not disprove myself. So that's why I'm like, I'm not understanding how people are not taking this more serious. I know the guy's dead and everything, but we're still talking about people's families that had never gotten closure. And I feel that's upsetting just because you're holding on to something that I'm like, the only thing I can ask you is, if the police had this evidence, would he not have been called the Zodiac Killer?
Well, I don't know if he would have been convicted in a court of law. I think that law enforcement would have taken him a lot more seriously. They would have
Yeah,
been more aggressive with their efforts. But
for
I would
sure.
like to do a little bit of recapping for the audience to make sure that
Sure,
everybody is on the same page. So it
sure.
sounds like your method was you looked at the Zodiac Killer's misspellings because they're
Hmm.
very, very blatant and clear misspellings.
Exactly.
Very simple
Yep,
words were misspelled. And
yep.
then you took all of them, not just,
Yep.
some of them, not when it was convenient, but you took all of them, you put those together, and you
No, no,
found
no,
that,
no, no, no. What I did to begin with was I only took the misspellings from 340.
okay, only from 340.
And that's how I spelled, wasn't he my new life, is life will be. Then I started looking at misspellings and extra letters and stuff in all the other ciphers. But the complete coherent phrase started from 340's deciphered misspellings.
And then for your solution to the Z13, is the answer just 6, or is there like another Lee Allen solution? I mean, I know you're supposed to reveal Lee Allen, but would you say that the solution is 6, or is it Lee Allen?
No, it's both. You can spell Lee Allen with the characters in C13 when you're using characters from other ciphers, but it is meant as a checksum. So the actual letters in C13, all 13 letters, assign them a numeric value, modulo that by 26, and you come to the result of 6, which is the same if you took LEEALLEN, signed numeric values to those, and divided that by 26, divided it into itself by a modulus of 26. you come to 6 as well. So C13, all it's meant to do is to confirm you have found Lee Allen in C340. That's basically what it is.
Right, because the Zodiac said, have you cracked the last cipher yet? My name
My
is
name
blank."
is exactly.
Right,
So
right.
he's basically like, listen, you have my name, put it in, and here's how you confirm it. That's basically what C13 is. If you come to 6, you found the name. That's basically what he's doing. Then I'm assuming he got annoyed and sent C32 because, again, like I said, C32 is his full address. So he
It's his
almost
full
is like, you
address.
can't get it. Why can't you get it? Okay, I'll give you my full address. It's 32 Fresno Street, Vallejo.
Well, you said the 32 is not included. There are 32 symbols, and that was a reference to 32 Fresno Street where
No,
I
no,
heard.
no, 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 no. The length C32, it's called C32 because the length is 32. Okay.
Right.
You have 32 characters. Those 32 characters, I took, of course, the sum of those, which is 32. That's just the street number. When you then add all the other letters up, like the 18 you have in 408 and the misspelled one in 340 and the remainder of 32, all the characters together in one pool, you can spell Fresno Street, Vallejo. You can also spell Lee Allen.
Right. All I meant was you were saying that the solution is Fresno Street Vallejo, and I thought you said that the 32 was not actually part of your cipher solution. You're using the number 32 from, well, the Z32, the amount of symbols in the cipher.
Well, I'm just using that to get the number to put in the address. If we're not thinking about the number 32 at all, the characters from 408, 340, and 32, the characters themselves can spell Fresno Street, Vallejo, and they can spell Lee Allen. 32 is just because it's 32, I put it in front, and then you have the full address with the number. If you don't want the number, you can still spell Fresno Street, Vallejo.
Right, absolutely. It sounds like we're on the same page, and I
Okay,
understand
good, good.
what you're saying. But from reading your website, I've noticed that
Mhm.
you've also made observations about the Zodiac Killer's Halloween card. Would you like to
Mhm.
talk to us about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was more just some simple words. That's just something I scanned over. I haven't given it too much scrutiny myself, to be honest. It was more for Claude to verify. I literally told Claude, go through the rest of the communication we have from the Zodiac. Because again, in my opinion, when I was done with those 4 ciphers, I was like, okay, it's Lee Allen. His address is there. But I just said, let's just for fun try to go through the rest of the material we have here. And basically, what Claude came back to me and told me, and I haven't looked too much depth into the Halloween card or the 78 letter, but it's saying that the probability of it not being from the Zodiac is basically 0, and it has the same checksum math to get to Lee Allen. I have not personally gone too in depth into those two, to be honest with you.
But there is one letter that you did talk about, and that was the 1978 letter.
That's
And
correct.
what are your thoughts about this one?
Well, I was interested about it because police said it probably wasn't from him. And
Right.
that's why I basically were telling Claude, well, let's see again. Again, now it's easy for Claude to compare things because it can start looking at words, letters, assign them numeric values, and come to a checksum. That way it will be quick to get to it. And of course, it's looking for Lee Allen. So it has found Lee Allen in the highlighted words that I put out, which was, again, if you look at his spelling and his word placement in his letter, it's like weird. Some things are uppercase, some are not and stuff. So it was just interested to see. It's not the entire letter content is taking connections out of. It's more something that reminds it of the ciphers themselves, like in the same way, would the Zodiac have done it this way? Okay, then it takes some key phrases out of that and tries to see if it can stuff the name in. Again, I will say the Halloween and the 1978 letter is way more biased to me to say because there's no encryption going on. You know what I mean? There's no ciphers or anything. So here you could technically say, well, if you're looking for a needle in a haystack with a magnet, you're going to find it. You know what I mean? Like, um, but the other ciphers is way different because that is cryptology. It's intentional. It's a completely different way of doing it. But could if I only had those two other letters, could I prove those are from the Zodiac? Absolutely not.
Okay, okay. But because, we might want to give a little bit of pushback,
Of
what do you think
course.
about the observation or the hypothesis that has been formed that somebody fabricated the 1978 letter, that it is indeed a hoax, and they did so by studying the other Zodiac Killer letters, like it's a copycat, but this person looked at the text of other Zodiac letters as well as practicing the handwriting even for things that were published in the
Hmm.
newspaper. And they were
Hmm.
trying to recreate this just to
Hmm.
make it appear to be the Zodiac. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
I mean, you you could say that, but I will say that it, it would have to be a person. Obviously, if I'm correct, if Lee Allen is truly in here, which math is, I hate math, but math don't lie, and a computer that can do math better than anybody on planet is saying that I'm not wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it would have to be a person that knew that the main suspect, the name he went by, that's not even his real name, encoded that into fake messages and stuff. It seems extremely unlikely. That's number one. Number two is after I spoke with Connie Seawater, um, I won't say too much about what we spoke about, but he was an insane individual. Arthur Lee Allen, there's no question about it. He was a horrible person. Um, and she told me they had been to every single location the murders had happened on. She told me he used to put glue on his fingertips. That's why they never found prints. She told me he had her and her brother lick stamps and the dog lick stamps and stuff. That's why there was never no DNA on stamps. Like everything she said kind of backed up all the other things where people are like, well, why is there no prints? Why is there no DNA? Why is there no this and that? She told me a lot of really intimate personal things that connected the rest of it. And again, we know there was a guy running around calling himself the Zodiac because people survived, right? Um, and to put in a guy's name that wasn't his official name, and he was the main suspect, then you're starting a whole theory about that it's some person that hated Arthur Lee Allen that tried to set him up, maybe as the that all that seems very unlikely to me.
Well, what about Don Chaney, Arthur Lee Allen's friend? I mean, you just brought up a very possible scenario of somebody who had a problem with Arthur Lee Allen, and I should refer to Don Chaney as a former friend of Allen. Both of
Yeah,
them have since passed away, but I think you may have even mentioned him on your website too.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, he's someone who had a falling out with Lee Allen. Would he not be the
true.
type to try and vilify Allen in this way?
True, but then you got to realize that he wasn't a cryptologist. So
Well,
whoever wrote the Zodiac letters, you got to realize it took them 59 years to crack the C340. This is someone that is highly trained in cryptology. So it's not something you're sitting at home and you learn some encryption techniques as a Boy Scout. Okay, that's not how you made these ciphers. This is someone that had done that on a regular basis, that was really into cryptology, that made these ciphers. That's why they took so long. And as far as I know, Cheney had zero to do with cryptology.
but he was a mechanical engineer. He was also
True,
ex Air Force. He could have been
true,
exposed to things in those
true.
disciplines.
But when I looked into him again, again there's way more material online about Lee Allen, obviously, than there is of Cheney.
That's
But
right.
but when I build all these files up, so what I did to do these projects when I'm analyzing something is I have an arguments file, I have an evidence file, I have a victims file, I have a uh police file, law enforcement, all these different files, and he keeps combining material that it's learned from this whole thing in there. And I'm literally going through every person to collect background information about them before I even start doing any of this. And Cheney never, ever once got flagged for anything in this whole thing. And you got to realize, again, like I'm saying, when I looked at this, I wasn't biased. I didn't want to find Lee Allen. I didn't want to find Cheney. I didn't want to find Lawrence Kay. I had no clue or opinion about who could possibly be the Zodiac Killer. I took the evidence that was available to me, the material, the suspects, whatever, who's been named, put him into a funnel and pulled him through as hard as I could until only one came out. That's all I did. So he would have some point, if he could have been more connected with this, Claude would have some point have told me, listen, he keeps appearing in my rounds here. I keep chewing. I'm seeing this name. That's not what's happening. The Allen is coming up. So he would have to be smarter than an AI computer back then, today, to fool it, to make it think it's Lee Allen that did it and not him. It seems unlikely. Like if there had been one mention about that he had any interest in cryptology, he would have been on the list of suspects. Because when I started, because I don't know who I can suspect of anything, the only thing I can assume when I start is, what do I have in front of me? I have some encrypted ciphers that nobody has broken, which means whoever did these pieces of paper was really good at what they did. So already there, you can exclude so many people, you know what I mean? So I highly doubt that theory. And why? Can you imagine? I just can't even. Let's say it was really him. Let's say he set Lee Allen up, and let's say it was found out he did it. I mean, can you imagine if you were found out you were trying to set someone up for multiple murders? And how would that even work? Are you telling me that he hears about someone running around killing people, and he then claims that his former friend Lee Allen is this supposed Zodiac killer, but he hasn't really killed anybody? It seems like a very vague theory to me.
Well, now let's be clear. There are a couple things with that. The first one is that in Don Chaney's story, Lee Allen
Hmm.
told him that he was going to commit murders and use the name Zodiac, and he
Hmm.
said that in after the Lake Herman Road murders would have taken place. But
Yeah.
before the Zodiac Killer's debut, that's according to
Hmm.
Don Chaney, and then he would tell a bunch of wild stories about Lee Allen. But
Hmm.
then there also is the possibility that he simply just figured it out that Alan was, in his mind, the Zodiac, and he
Hmm.
wanted to come forward and just tell these stories because he's like, I know who the Zodiac is, but they're not going to believe me, so I have to present my information in a certain way. He was trying to actually get people to take him seriously, and I mean, there are reasons why Don Chaney may have also wanted to vilify Allen. If this is not an informant now, this is the actual suspect, Don Chaney, and that would
Hmm.
be Allen is the perfect patsy. It's the title of a chapter in the book citing in on the Zodiac Killer by Drew Beeson about this subject. And
But
that,
I'm sorry.
go
Are
ahead.
you saying that Cheney then was the real Zodiac? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, that's
Or
the
he's just
subject of
doing
the
it
book.
to set him up?
Well, it's the subject of the book, citing it on the Zodiac Killer. It would
Hmm.
be both that Cheney was the Zodiac and he was trying to set Allen up, the perfect patsy. But he's not setting him up in a way where he can actually be convicted. It's almost like he's making people think it's Allen a little bit, but there's no smoking gun that is released. There is no.
Okay, well, here's one thing that will completely break that theory, in my opinion,
All right, let's hear.
especially after what I found. So, if that was the case, let's say he wanted to set him up, right? He would then have put Arthur, Lee, Leigh, and Allen into the ciphers to be decrypted. He wouldn't have made it even harder for law enforcement and just put Lee Allen in there as names. Now you got to realize I can't spell Arthur in any cipher, and I can't spell Lee with a GH because there's no G's to use. So if that was the case, even though that's so elaborate. It's more elaborate than the most elaborate setup I've ever heard in any movie, that someone would go through such crazy steps to set someone up. All you have to do is put some DNA in his house and call the police and he's done. But if that was the case, he would have put Arthur Allen or Arthur Lee, Leigh, or something. He wouldn't just have put Lee Allen in there. That to me is such a personal way, where I'm like, if I'm Arthur Lee Allen, a lot of serial killers want to be found out secretly. Down inside of them, there's something wrong. Obviously, you run around killing people, but I deep down want to be stopped, but not really. So I'm gonna make it as hard for them to know as humanly possible that it is me who's the Zodiac. So I'm gonna put in what I go by, and I'm gonna give them opportunities to catch me. I'm gonna say to them, to their face, I go by Lee Allen. But they are obviously, every time they're gonna look at this, they're gonna look at the police report and look at my full name, and they're never gonna find it. That's why I think that this is a killer that was so insane, really intelligent, but really creepy and nuts. And he got away with it. He died in 92 in a, what, I don't know, he wasn't in a mental hospital at the time, I don't think. But on top of
No.
all this, what you're saying, right? So where I have another angle from it is not just the Lee Allen I found, where that makes what you're saying beyond implausible. That would be, then it's like triple encryptions of him trying to set up his old friend. That's unlikely. But then Connie Seawater comes in, that says that she has been to places with this man, every single place where there were Zodiac killings. She says she's seen him with blood on it at one of the days where someone was murdered there, et cetera, et cetera. Um, eh, there's too many things that to me it seems unlikely. I mean, anything is possible. And the thing is also today, even though I call it Zodiac Saul, which a lot of people are getting offended about, whatever. I'm just that's what I thought would sound good for him. That's why I did it. It wasn't to be arrogant. It just was a good name for it, I thought.
It's a
Um,
fine name.
yeah, I was like, it was a good name. And for what I found, and I'm telling you, I've sat over and over again when I got criticism online, and I have asked over and over again in different ways, tried to get Claude to prove me wrong. And it's literally always coming out to the same thing. Tim, you have found something that is mathematically proven, replicatable over 6 materials. The chances is 1 in 130 billion you're wrong. You're not wrong. That's literally what it comes out every time. It's almost getting annoyed at me for keep like poking at it, saying, "Oh, don't assume this, don't do that." And the computer's literally like, the odds of you being wrong is 1 in 130 billion. That's what it keeps telling me.
Okay,
So, I mean, but again, nobody can prove it. Like, you would have to see Lee Allen today go out and kill someone in a almost Zodiac attire, then you can be 100%. But if someone can confirm that what I found is correct, then they should be, because it's mathematical. I even have the replication materials in almost every programming language there is to replicate it yourself. I've even sent a very simplified report to David, and hopefully he will look at it. He's super busy, but he's actually taking it serious. He's actually looking into my methodology for this. So if he comes back and says that, well, he can't say I'm wrong. Again, nobody can prove who the Zodiac is. He's dead. You know what I mean? You haven't seen him do it. Again, we're assuming a lot of things, but this is still, I'm not even assuming the name here. I got it out of math. So the only way I would be wrong in this is if your theory holds true, that someone like Cheney or someone else, there's some else real Zodiac killer that deliberately set up Arthur Lee Allen, knew him personally, knew he went by a different name, basically, spend the time on making all these crazy, insane ciphers. It's the craziest hoax I've ever seen. And then there's also the timeline don't match, right? Because the letter, when the Zodiac stuff stopped, It was the exact period where he was in the mental hospital. So you're telling me that someone that was trying to set Arthur Lee Allen up, that had been toying with the police and messing with Allen for all these years, he stopped while he was in the mental institution and then started when he got out again? That's
Well,
not
yeah.
logical. That's
If
not
you wanted
logical.
to, if you wanted to vilify Lee Allen, wouldn't you do that? Why would you write the letter if he was in the mental institution? Wouldn't that exonerate him?
It it seems extremely far-fetched that someone would, like, imagine how nuts that person would have to be if their life was so focused on revenge on Lee Allen for that many years, to keep sending in materials about him, to wait 2 years for him to hopefully come out of a mental institution, to hopefully have some. It seems bizarre. But again, I can't prove anything. All I can prove is I can prove mathematically that Lee Allen is in there. That's what I can prove. And you can replicate it. I cannot prove to you, I'm not police, I'm not law enforcement. I can't go to his house. I can't dig his bones up and do more testing on him or anything. You know what I mean? I can't physically prove it. All I can tell you is what I've heard from Connie and what I have found. Even if Arthur Lee Allen is not the Zodiac Killer, it is the best framing ever. Then it would be Connie maybe to set him up, because what she has given me of information, I'm positive he was the Zodiac. Like I can't even tell you how positive I am after speaking to her, but I can't prove it. Nobody can.
But it sounds like one thing that you have shared is because this is your opportunity to come on Zodiac Monday and to give some clarity to your points. You were
Sure.
saying that if somebody were trying to vilify Lee Allen, you think that they would use Arthur Lee Allen or Leigh Allen because
Of
that
course.
was
Yeah.
his legal name, and
Yeah.
that would be something that the police would track down. If
Yeah.
it would be the first thing that they would think about is to search for somebody's name the way it's legally written, not a
Yeah.
nickname that has an altered spelling. Did I get
A
you?
100%. A hundred
Okay,
percent.
okay.
From a personal perspective, if I had to put myself in a killer's shoes that secretly, but I don't want to admit to myself, I want to get caught, I would put in my nicknames to give them a 0.1% chance to catch me, if you know what I mean.
I do. But I would actually just like to ask you one question very briefly as we wind
Sure.
down. When do you think the first Zodiac crime occurred?
Well, again, that's the problem, right? Because we don't know if Zodiac crimes were committed way before that whoever was the Zodiac all of a sudden wanted to toy with law enforcement and newspapers. I don't think the first crime he took credit for was the first one. Like that, it would be something you would work yourself up to start doing, to start taunting the police like that. I would assume that the only way you would get to a point where you're that confident that you can start giving people your name and they still don't know it's you, you would have killed people before and gotten away with it.
So I guess I can rephrase that because there was one thing that I just really wanted to know.
Yeah.
Do you think that Arthur Lee Allen committed the murder of Sherry Joe Bates in 1966?
Um, I do. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Because it sounded like a lot of the things you were saying would be in line with that, because we also have the letters and the misspellings in them that followed after
Yeah.
Sherry Joe Bates was murdered. And it
Yes.
sounded like the theory that you put forward would tie in very neatly to that. Would you agree or disagree?
No, I think so. Yeah, for sure. But I think it's the first one we know about. Let's put it like that.
Okay, well, Tim, we are winding down and approaching the hour mark, so I would just like to give you the floor and allow you to have a final send-off. Is there any concluding message that you have for the listeners of Black Box Online Radio? Where can people find your website? What do you have in the works? Are there any new posts that are going to be coming out? And any final notes that you have about the Zodiac Killer? The floor is yours.
Sure. Well, as you know, the website is the zodiacsolve.com. I'm still gonna I'm not working that much more on it, to be honest with you. I'm hoping people try to. I'm not seeking any fame in this. I have nothing to gain in it, but I would, if I'm right, I would like someone smarter than me to come and tell me, hey, he's right, and we believe it. So the people that have lost people to this Zodiac killer could get closure. I can't imagine going your whole life and if you had lost a child to this person or something, you know what I mean? Like, I just think it's upsetting that pride should stop that closure from happening. If someone can come and prove me wrong and I can see it mathematically, I'm completely off base, I have no problem in admitting that at all. Like, I have nothing to gain in this. I have so many other projects right now. I'm really not working that much on the Zodiac right now. I feel like it was a super fun, cool project. Even though it's obviously a tragic thing to be researching, but it was interesting. I'm interested in cryptology. Um, I've been working on the March Impromptu thing. Right now, I'm working on some really big coding cryptology projects. So I won't be doing that much more. But if people contact me, if they find a mistake, they want to know more, they certainly can.
All right, and Tim Carter of the zodiacsolve.com, thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a good one, Ed.
You too.